Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Film Frauds, or myself, Matt, and my co-hosts, Mark
Hello.
and Tyler,
Hello.
provide our completely unprofessional and 100% biased opinions on the movies of today, tomorrow, and yesteryear. But today, we are talking about a movie that is very special to me. It is called The Handmaiden, directed by probably my favorite filmmaker, at least he's become my favorite filmmaker over the past year, Park Chan-wook, and it takes place in Japanese-occupied Korea and follows Suki, who is the handmaiden, as she and the count devise a scheme to get the fortune of a rich Korean nobleman who was also forging erotic books and having live erotic book readings from his niece,
Yep.
Lady Hasako.
Hideko.
Something I have right here. One second, Lady Hideko.
Yep.
And so it's basically an elaborate plan to get Hideko away from this horrible man while also taking her inheritance and maybe putting her in a Salem asylum. We'll see what happens though, because there are
Yep.
plenty of interesting plot points in this movie. I love it. I've seen it 5 times at this point.
Holy
I
shit.
watch it. I've watched it every year since 2017, and I cannot say enough about it. But Tyler's seen it twice now. Mark has seen it once. Mark, I'm curious, what do you think of The Handmaiden?
It's obviously like incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm in love with it though. I like
Okay.
it a lot. I like it a lot and I admire it. I think it might I feel like if for those who remember our sympathy for Lady Vengeance
Yeah.
video, I was like, this movie is incredible, but it's not resonating with me in the capacity that I was either expecting or hoping for.
Yeah.
Because with this film and Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, it's like Park Chan-wook is like this magician director. It's like he's holding one card in front of you and then it turns into like 4.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of like overwhelming. And to be honest, this film really subverted my expectations because when you're following Junko, no, not Junko. What's her name? Suki?
Suki, yeah.
Junko was the first one, the first
Yeah.
handmaiden. Suki, in the first 40 minutes, you're following her story and it's told fairly linearly.
Yeah.
I was like, why is this not interesting to me? I don't know why I'm not interested in this. And I was totally underestimating Park Chan-wook.
Yeah.
And then
Never underestimate Park Chan-wook.
Yeah, he starts, revealing his hand slowly.
Yeah.
And I think there was periods in this film where my jaw was like open for like 5 minutes straight. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, what?
Yep.
There's a lot. I think there's a lot to be said on this film, but in general, I really enjoyed it. But I don't see myself rewatching it for a while, at least. I'll need to it'll be a few more years before I'll feel up for it.
Okay, you're dead to me, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tyler, what did you think of The Handmaiden on your second viewing? Because we reviewed it like almost like a little over a year ago today.
Yeah.
And that was our first actual review.
Yeah, this was basically Handmaiden was the start of Film Frauds. It's also our most viewed video, most viewed podcast. It's like everything for everything to us. I loved it the first time. And to me, having explored more of Park Chan-wook's movies, this is his magnum opus. I think it takes a lot of his themes and ideas that he puts forward in all of his other movies and then just maximizes them to the extreme. Park Chan-wook has always had a fascination with sex and violence, clearly. And this one is where it feels the most true, where sex and violence have character arcs of themselves or thematic arcs of themselves. And to me, this isn't my favorite movie of his. It's my second favorite movie of his. I still will always love Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. That's one of those movies I've seen recently that has just taken my breath away. But there is clearly something incredibly special and masterful about the craft and the storytelling here. It's a movie that is told like a play or a theater or something like that, where it has multiple different acts, and each act works to change your understanding of the previous act. So you're basically getting 3 different movies that alter your understanding and perception of the movie before it, which constantly leaves you questioning the direction of the movie, which creates this like fresh way of telling a pretty fascinating, albeit like pretty somewhat conventional at times story, but taking it and making it doing like the Park Chan-wook like unique aspects of storytelling, of taking this kind of like basic human desire of like love or escapism and then morphing it in through these kind of like situations and realities of the characters around them. And it, to me, it's like a masterwork in nearly every single capacity. Like I was just blown away by like how perfect almost everything in this movie is.
Yeah. So this is my 5th time watching it, as I said earlier, and there's always something new I notice or appreciate in this film every time I watch it. I would say the first time I did see it, I mean, the first time I saw it, I did love it, but I would say as of right now, it's basically my favorite film of the 2010s, and it was my favorite film of the 2010s when I first watched it. I really enjoyed it, but over time and having kept rewatching it, it's grown to be one of my favorite movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And going what Mark said about Park Chan-wook slowly revealing his hand, I want to talk a little bit about like the first part of the movie, specifically like Mark, what you thought of the first part and some of the cons you may have had with it, and I guess like your reaction to as things transgress and it slowly reveals that the plot's more complicated than it is. So we're just gonna spoilers. We watch the movie clearly, but Mark, I'm interested in what like you thought of like the first part and the introduction to the movie.
Yeah, I think I want to place emphasis on the fact that Park Chan-wook had tricked me, and that the story that is presented when you're following Suki,
Yeah.
It's formulaic in a sense.
Mhm.
It's generic, like damsel in distress, trapped in a castle sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, I felt like I was like, oh, this is how the movie's going to transpire. But then like I realized like before the hand was revealed, I was like, wait, this is Park Chan-wook. I need to like be on my toes here.
He's like, I know you, Park Chan-wook.
Yeah, you can't fool me.
Mark also looked at the runtime and had an hour and 45 minutes left and was like, oh shit.
There's probably a little more to this plot.
I think for me, what was missing in that first part was an element of tension.
Okay.
I was I did not feel fully engaged, and I had I didn't really have this desire to be engaged. And I think maybe that was deliberate because obviously on a rewatch, that is going to change. I'm going to be much more hyper aware.
And it did for me. And I can say on a rewatch.
Yeah. And so I think without a doubt, when I watch the film again, whenever that may be, I'm going to have a much better experience with the first half. But after Suki is taken into the insane asylum, that's basically when I was like, okay, like I'm in,
Yeah.
It was just that first part where I didn't check my phone or anything, but I was not fully in it. I was like, again, he completely subverted my expectations, really.
But in a satisfying way.
Yeah.
Unlike the last one.
In a satisfying way. I think, I don't know. I think I get suspicious when things draw too much attention to themselves, like the director draws too much attention to themselves in a film.
Yeah.
And it's like, is this good because it's good, or is it good because it's flashy? I think this is good because it's good.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like when I'm trying to like calculate that in my head and like come to a conclusion, I'm not fully absorbed in the film. I was like, this is clever, but it's clever for its own sake.
Yeah.
So that's my view on the first part.
Tyler, did you have similar views to Mark, like when you first saw it, or has that changed the first part of the movie at least?
I think it was. So for me, the first viewing was interesting because this is a movie, Matt, you've been talking about at least.
I remember when I said I was recommending, not to cut you off, I remember when I wish we had the face cams at the time, because when I said, oh, we're going to watch The Handmaiden, your face, you went, you look so miserable.
I was like, God damn
it.
The Handmaiden. I was like, what the fuck? Because Matt, you've been talking about this movie since 2016, since it came out. You're like, someone watch this movie, please. It's the best thing I've seen in a lot, like forever. And there was a point where I'm like, you know what? When I sat down to watch it, I was like, let's see what all the hype is about. And I think a lot of it was like, I think I was definitely higher than you, Mark, the first time watching it. At least it was for that first part, because my expectations were so low that when the movie starts and it's like this very like wonderfully directed, what?
My expectations were so low.
God, I was like dreading it. I was like,
were you watching Mission Impossible at the time?
I was watching Man of Steel on repeat. But like I was just like prepping. I was like, oh, it's one of those weird sex movies Matt likes. Whatever, we'll get through it. Whatever, I'll deal with it. So like when all of a sudden the movie starts and it's like these beautiful and like unique framings of shots, and like it'll be one cut from like a long angle from like the corner and then cut to a Dutch tilt and cut back to like it's symmetrical, and you're like, this is really beautiful. And you're right, the story is like purposely cliche at the start, but it's also done because you have to have that first part where they spend time together, or else the rest of the movie falls apart completely. If you don't believe the relationship between the two characters, and I talked about this a lot in the first review we did a year ago, a lot of the movie and the undertaking that they go through kind of fall apart a little bit, because you have to have this kind of like 40 to 45 minutes of characters kind of like flirting a little bit and like not feeling each other out, but like is there like a mutual sense of attraction, and they spend time together. And it does feel like this cliche period piece of two characters overcoming like the oppressive patriarchal system at the time, and like they're so oppressed and like they're like chess pieces and like used and manipulated, that their sense of like trauma and oppression was bring them together. But it really is, to me, like they're really great scenes of them just like kind of joking around together. Which you find out later has other meanings, and it's what makes this movie so great to me, that you're just like, I'm really glad we spent 45 minutes of just like spending time with these characters and like learning about their like idiosyncrasies and their like relationships with each other. I thought it was just really like well done, despite it being the story cliche.
Yeah, and I think also it's presented in a cliche way because you're seeing it through Suki's eyes. And I think she herself thinks she's got the situation figured out.
Yeah, she thinks Lady Hideko is like a naive little girl, even though she's the one being played by the lady.
Which I think also is one of those things where, again, spoilers, when we find out that it was all a plan by Count Fujiwara and Lady Hideko at the start, and then you later find out it was that Hideko and Suki ended up planning their own thing. But when you get that sense of like, oh, then you go back to the scenes and view it from Hideko's perspective, when you get it from that framing of like she's just tricking Suki, but then you get those moments where like the plan kind of like takes a back seat to their relationship, and she realizes it's a connection, makes their relationship that much more believable, because her plan to get out of the oppressive uncle, like the environment she has her in, falls to the wayside for her attraction and relationship with this person. It makes that like, oh my God, you have an out and you're sabotaging it for this person. It makes the relationship far more believable. And it's like this really wonderfully woven structure that starts linearly, then it becomes kind of fractured. And towards the end of the the second part, you've basically gone back and forth and altered different perspectives, and you're jumping between the timelines, but it makes sense. I'm just incredibly enamored by the presentation, the structure of this movie, and how it alters our understanding in relationships. Like it's rare when you see a movie like that uses its structure and narrative framing to enhance the relationship without actually like revealing anything new.
I would say like all like the count scenes, especially early on when he's talking with Suki.
Yeah.
Like all those scenes have like new significance when you know like his full plot when you rewatch it.
Yeah.
And watching the relationship between the Count and Lady Hideko through Suki's eyes is different. And then you see it again in Act 2, and you realize they're completely faking it for the uncle and for Suki. It's you know, it's a movie has so much layers to it.
Yep.
And then I would say like what did you so I'd say like this relationship between Lady Hideko and Suki is like one of the best like relationships I've seen in a film. And probably like across media, because like we've said this before, Tyler and I have, like there's no like I love you scene or anything. You just know that they're like you know, they're in it. They're like it's them versus the world from like from you know, by the end of the movie, when they're you know, they're willing to take these huge risks for each other. Like you just can see like the two actors have great on-screen chemistry, but just in the way how like first Lady Hideko how like first like Suki would be okay with leaving Lady Hideko and the Count together, and then like scenes later on where she's like, no, there's nothing else I need to do right now, I'm gonna sit here and like nothing bad happens. But I was completely bought into like the relationship.
Absolutely. I think what's impressive about Park Chan-wook for me is that in this film and in Old Boy, he is able to have a revelation happen during a sex scene. As far as I'm aware of, at least for me, that's the only time I've ever seen that happen in a film, where like a sex scene needs to be there because it's absolutely critical to the plot. And,
Gone Girl, maybe Gone Girl. I've recently.
I haven't rewatched Gone Girl in a while.
Okay, I don't say it. I rewatched it recently, so that's why.
I kind of want to change the subject a little bit to a more broader aspect, and I think what I like about Park Chan-wook, and I think this is probably just like why we love foreign cinema, is he is achieving something that only a film can do. You cannot do this in like a book or.
Hold on, this is actually based off a book called Fingersmith.
Is it really?
It's based off a novel, okay. But the thing is, I just because it's
fingers.
Yeah, Fingersmith. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But the way the story is told.
Yeah.
Yeah, like shifting perspectives and everything. I think, when you look at like the Hollywood machine, well, there's obviously Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. There's literally,
Yeah.
3 parts to this.
Yeah.
But, I think Park Chan-wook is like, creating something with cinematic vision. And I think that's why, particularly in our case, why we love this film so much.
Yeah.
As opposed to like whatever. Oh, Tyler's the exception here. He's the guy who likes the
He's only gave 1, 2, 3 Bedlam. Wait, what?
Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 5 stars.
I give it 4 stars. I'm not a shill. That movie's awesome, by the way. I don't know what you guys are talking about. John Travolta hams it up. You guys are idiots. Where he say, oh, like, so basically the idea of like this is a clearly like an uncompromised, or we know that we can speculate vision of like this is a true story. Like this movie's 2.5 hours long, and it's a hard R, weird, perverted sex
it's like
movie.
Borderline NC-17, but classy.
Yeah. There's like some like serious like mature content to this, like a lot of like allusions to like horrific sexual assault,
Child
and,
abuse.
Child abuse. It's like really fucked up, but that's kind of what makes it really special in a certain regard, because it comes out in 2016. It's not like Old Boy, which came out in the early 2000s. It's not like Sympathy for Lady Vengeance came out mid 2000s. It's like a pure like stance of like this is something that stands out. Because I think of what came out in 2016, like Avengers Civil War or whatever, Captain America Civil War, like the first Justice League. Like this is a year of like blockbusters are now the biggest
like
thing on the planet.
Superhero blockbuster time.
And this movie comes.
Handmaiden, Park Chan-wook.
Park Chan-wook comes out and it's like, oh dear God.
You're not winning an Oscar, Park Chan-wook.
Yeah, you're not. That's not nominated. No, we're not nominating the weird sex movie from South Korea. It's kind of
a woman has sex with a wooden doll.
Yep, it's like what the fuck.
Yeah.
I want to jump back to one point that Matt said real quick. The fact that there's like no big I love you scenes. There aren't, but there also are. But the I love you scenes are like they're simple in their execution and their message, but they're impactful. And I'm talking about the ripping up of the books in the library at the end.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite scenes.
It's one of my favorite scenes, and I agree, because it's one of those things of like they never say I love you in this movie. They never like there's no big like moment of like you're the one for me. Or so like they just like she destroys like the very like representation of her oppression, and it's like it's all you need. Like she takes it, this horrific act, and she's like Lady Hideko's crying. And she's like, I can't do anything. I can't escape it. And Suki just rips up the books and like destroys them all. And you're like, this is what I want. Yeah. Like, this is amazing.
I love that shot of like the Viper ornament and like Hideko just, Suki just takes like the bat and just smashes it. Just,
yep.
And it's like a hard cut. All that stuff is great.
Yeah. And you're like, this is awesome. And you're like, this is really just the movie to me just is always like, I could see myself rewatching this like very soon. Like, it just feels like that special of a movie where you're like, I just, like, the pacing is excellent, and 2.5 hours legitimately like fly by. Like, an hour and 45 minutes went by. I was like, I don't know what had just happened.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where that middle part went. Which is weird because the middle part is like the hardest part to get through. Because that's when we start to deal with a lot of the harder content.
Yeah, we can go into that if you want.
Matt, do you want to break down like what we really kind of get into?
Okay, so first I want to say that no one handles flashbacks better than Park Chan-wook as a director.
Yeah.
The way he's able to just seamlessly, like, you have that in Old Boy when like literally the main character is following himself as a younger man, like retracing his steps, but there's no like what's going on right now kind of moment. Same thing with Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. Great flashbacks. Here you have like the Act 1 ends with the swerve where Suki is being taken to the mental hospital. She's the one who they claim is Lady Hideko. And then Lady Hideko and the Count supposedly, get away. And then so you have Act 2 open. You're like, why would Lady Hideko just betray Suki like that? You get her history and her awful time growing up with her parent, with living under her uncle. And so there's obvious child abuse that you just have to watch. Yeah. There's suggestions of sexual abuse as well, or like scaring her with like the octopus thing, or like the monster in the basement.
I'm curious.
Like a whole
Mark, because spoiler alert, there's an octopus at the end of the movie. Mark, what were your thoughts about the octopus? What was that? I know it's jumping ahead a little bit, but as the first time watching it, I was like, what the fuck is happening? It's like, what is this? What am I watching?
Yeah. When the octopus is shown, I was like, oh, that makes sense why that's there. Because you see in the book, like at the midpoint, one of the books, and is it implied that the octopus is used on the aunt?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yeah?
I
And
think
it's
so.
like threatening. She's gonna threaten to use it on her
Yeah.
Lady Hideko, young Lady
Yeah.
Hideko as well.
It's yeah. I like audibly said, "Oh shit!" when I saw it.
You're like,
I
oh,
was
no.
like, because when it's when Lady Hideko goes down for the first time into the basement, you only see her face and you can hear the noise. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, is that molten lava? What is that?
Yeah. What the fuck is this?
But then when you're shown at the end, it's like, oh, okay, wow,
Yeah.
this guy is really sick in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want. I just was fascinated because we talked about the octopus. I'm like, Mark, what did you think? But in terms of like flashbacks, yeah, I mean, the flashback in this movie, like, and I think there's so many like perfectly structured stuff in this movie because like there's this really wonderful juxtaposition between a flashback of where you get the first like telling of like the sex erotica story where he sells the books, immediately juxtaposed by the sex scene between Hideko and Asuki to show this like juxtaposition between the representations in the arc of sex itself. And it's like this harsh cut from that act to the like sex between them. And you're like, there's a clear purpose between the structure of every single thing in this movie. Like everything is purposeful in the way, like not even like the narrative itself, but the structure is like what is the most important part about the storytelling in this movie. It's just really like excellent in every single regard. And that was what stood out to me the most was like the impact of the structure on a rewatch. It's like how new details come about and how it alters your understanding of arcs in the movie. And I think that's ultimately one of the more fascinating things is the fact that there are really wonderfully well character arcs and like thematic arcs in this movie. Even someone like Count Fujiwara has an arc and is an interesting one too. And I want to talk about him because we've kind of like brushed over him shortly. What do you guys think about just that everything as a whole, the structure, everything like that?
Just going back to the flashback, I just said that I love the aunt character and like it shows like what Lady Hideko could be if she stayed with the uncle for so long. Because like there's a scene where they're like sitting down and talking and like the aunt's like literally just like glitching out.
Yeah.
And then she gets up and starts to run and they pull the cell thing and like that's great. And then like the scene where she's reading the story to like all the Japanese men and then she's smiling at young Lady Hideko and then hard cuts to her like her corpse on the tree. All that stuff is so like well thought out. And it reminds me because when we watch like Justice League, the Snyder cut, and it's an auteur movie where it's a long movie, but there's so many scenes that are just purposely dragged out because of overindulgence. There's so much that's able to be executed. Like this is a long movie, but it's so well paced and it's so like fastly cut and directed that it gets a lot of story across in the 2.5 hours. But it never feels rushed in a way. Like for example, just like because I've watched it 5 times, so I pay attention to these things. Like someone like walking into a room and walking down a hall is so well cut and edited. Like it's like cut open a door and there's handheld shot of someone walking.
Yeah,
it's done in like such a fast way, but you understand like how big the house is despite the fact.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was like a Zack Snyder movie, I think of like when the Amazonians had like the bow and arrow and they slowly open that bow and they slowly walk over and they put it in because Zack Snyder's a filmmaker, things like that. You just appreciate Park Chan-wook's style even more.
Yeah, I completely agree. I did not expect to talk about Justice League, Zack Snyder's 2021 Justice League today, but there's always something new. I want to talk about because I want to talk about the thematic arc of sex in some capacity because it's like masterfully done. The way it's structured, the way it's told, the way in which sex is itself as an arc, I think is just so fascinating. Before I like ramble, because I could ramble about it for 20 minutes. What do you guys think about it?
Mark?
Well,
it's very well shot.
Yeah,
very well shot.
There's a lot of it in the movie.
There's a lot of it. I don't know. Yeah, I think it was interesting that you could flash back to the same sex scene and have it have a different connotation.
Yep.
I think that is remarkably impressive. And how that changes the context. That sort of blew me away. I was like, wow, just the shifting perspective. I think the shifting perspective aspect of this film is what impressed me the most.
Yeah.
And then there's the one at the end in which they use the, I don't know what those things are called, but it was the device that was used to like smack her hand at the beginning.
So
it's almost a tool of liberation.
Yeah.
I thought that was very, obviously symbolic. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot there to talk about. You go, Matt.
I mean, it's such a great scene, and like by like a lesser filmmaker, like that middle scene would have been so much more gratuitous and
Yep.
Yeah.
like male gazy, I guess. Even though, I mean, it's started by a guy, so it's obviously male gaze. But I do think that there's obvious class in it, and I guess like when he shot that scene, he wanted like no men in the room, so he shot from another room.
Yep.
And like let the actress just feel as comfortable as possible and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's really really well done, and it goes to show more of like the building of the relationship between Sookie and Lady Hideko.
Yep.
So I mean, I love this movie, so obviously I think the scenes are necessary, and I think that they're as well performed as it could be, and as classy as it could possibly be, and it's also wonderfully directed too.
Yeah.
So on top of that,
so a bunch
Matt,
of
you're
different
watching. You're like Matt. You're like the direction.
the direction,
Yes.
the sex. Yes. I have a lot of different stuff I could go for. There is a definite respect Park Chan-wook has. Of course, this is going to be a movie by the male gaze. I mean, that's just inherent. It's not like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, where it's
but
like
there's a woman screenwriter in this movie too, so you see that for as well.
I was going to get to that because there's a woman screenwriter, and I was looking up some interviews and stuff like that, or just some research about it. And Park Chan-wook heavily, collaborated with the writer of the novel, who's a woman.
Yeah.
And purposely got a female screenwriter, and also went and talked to queer women, and women in queer relationships, and to get a perspective on it. He also, I was going to bring up the thing of like, anytime there's a sex scene, he's like, everyone get the fuck, like get out. Like when this is not that. There are still elements of like the male gaze there and stuff like that, but the fact that there was a clear effort to try to mitigate that.
You could toss that to their own like attraction to each other as well.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
there's also the thing of like, is there like, I was looking up criticisms of like the movie and stuff like that. And people are like, the sex scenes were so like gratuitous and like not realistic. And I was like, well, there's also the character of Hideko is also only influenced in like by sex from male perspective.
Yeah.
So like, of course she's going to have like, sex is going to feel more like from the male gaze, because all she knows about sex is from these male written and male focused stories aimed to please men. And you're like, that's clearly something there. And maybe I'm thinking too much into it. Maybe that's like,
no, I never looked at it through that before. So that's
me neither.
Interesting take. Yeah.
Yeah. And
that changes things. Yeah.
It's one of those things of like, you also know that the character of Suki was like, her idea of sex is, she mentioned like my friend Kultan or whatever, like taught me in words. And you're like, so her influence of sex is only by men too, in some capacity. If Kultan is a male character, they never really explicitly say. But the aspect of sex itself is so fascinating because Park Chan-wook clearly has a fascination with it. We see it like intensely in Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and Old Boy. It's massive in Thirst. It's really impactful in Stoker, which, Matt, I saw you watch, and I had the exact same opinions on it about you, where the first half is really interesting and the second half kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Like
it's like marvelously directed.
It's like wonderfully directed. It's excellent. But sex, I just want to quickly ramble about it. Sex in the first act, because it's from Suki's perspective, is this like exploration into something unknown. It's a clear, like raw carnal, like attraction to each other.
Yeah.
It feels taboo, and that's kind of the point of it. It feels like it's a typical cliche sex scene in a movie.
But she's like doing it from the perspective of the count too, which like adds another layer to it.
Exactly. There's something there. It then shifts to be an act of horrific oppression and perversion, something that is used as a way to satisfy only men, but also at the same time demean and oppress women. And it's like, oh shit. Hard cut to Hideko's perspective, where it now works as a way as like pleasure and like this is like liberation, but not there just yet.
It's not staging. Like she only knows it through being like through like the theatrical element of it.
Exactly. It cuts back to though sex as being an act of oppression. Like, hey, it can't, like, we're not this linear progression. It has these ups and downs. It then cuts back again to being more of sense of like freedom. Of the way Hideko is able to like when her and Count Fujiwara like fake their wedding night. And all of a sudden she has the control, and you get that framing shot where after she's like taking control, she's Count Fujiwara is looking up and she's this imposing figure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I noticed that too.
And you're like, holy shit, let's take charge. And then at the end, like you guys were saying, sex is like this act of like liberation and freedom, and they take the very objects of their oppression and use it for their own like pleasure. And it's just wonderful, like complex arc that's influenced by the systems around it. And it's just why like I'm a big fan of like Victorian literature, because Victorian literature is so clearly society and environment influencing characters. And to me, this is why I love this movie so much, is you just feel every single influence of the environment and the society and the oppression on these characters, and how even like the male characters try to navigate their own, like the hierarchy of like systems to their own benefit. It's just, it's such a fascinating
Yeah, you're only
movie to
going
me.
through the perspective of the two main characters. Like
Yep.
the Count's view on it is completely different from them. The
Yep.
uncle's view on it could be dissected. Like all like the people who come to the house
Yep.
for the readings could have a different view on it as
Yep.
well. Like there's so much layers to it, and even like the Count like says, like, because they're gonna make out and like they don't want it, like they're both kind of like repelled by each other. And
Yep.
it's like, I'll just imagine you as like that character from like the readings.
Yep.
Like he calls her that, so it's
Yep.
you know, there's all these layers to that. Too.
The Count character is fascinating because the Count character is someone who works to be as an antithesis to the system, someone who wants to lie and cheat and find his own way up through the typical like machinations of how to propel in this society. But then even he gets a taste of like this kind of like perversion and falls victim to it. He becomes like the very object that he's working to kind of navigate around. And then we ultimately see the redemption in quotes question. Like
the Count is such an interesting character because he's first of all, like regardless of his morals, he's like the suavest character.
Yeah,
I think I've
awesome.
Like in film, he's like, he just looks cool. And like when he's in the car when he got arrested, he just takes the 3 cigarettes and smokes things like.
Yep. And that was something I didn't catch on the first time through, where you're just like, oh, that's right, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, just so casual about the fact that he's gonna die.
Yeah.
He's a really cool character. I mean, apart from like all the bad things that he does too. And like in this,
just let's sweep those under the rug.
Yeah.
I'm speaking purely from like a aesthetic standpoint.
Yeah.
And like acting, like the actor is incredible too. But like there's that scene where they're painting the peach, and then he just grabs the peach, he's like almost right, and just like this big old bite out of it.
Yeah, and it like the spit comes down. You're like this is awesome.
All that's good. And like the performances he does in front of the Count, like when Lady Hideko walks into the room and he pushes the chair out from behind her.
Yeah,
I saw that shot because I watched the trailer before I ever seen the movie, and like that shot was like what made me want to see the movie for some reason.
When he stands up out of the chair.
Yeah, like that shot was just so interesting for me, and that's like what motivated me just to sort this movie out in the first place.
Yeah.
But I mean, like this video's been like for 50 minutes now at this point.
Cares.
But I mean, what you just covered there was just perspective of the women, and like we could go further if we had more time into like all the men, all like the male gaze elements.
Yeah.
Like the reading scenes are so like well framed and shot, and you know that says a lot about a lot of things too.
Yeah. Like the women are often like, it's just kind of the framing of the men are often higher in position.
Yeah.
And anytime
there's a lot of them, like she's the only woman on the stage at the time.
Yeah. And you get this, by the way, this movie, I forgot how funny this movie was. There's like
Park Chan-wook is really, this is gonna sound really weird, so I'm just gonna say it.
Go for it.
Park Chan-wook is really good at like creating humor in dark situations, specifically in women falling on their heads.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
There's a scene. Let me explain for a second.
Okay.
So
please
there's
clarify.
a scene,
so I don't have to cut
so
this.
there's a scene in Thirst where the woman learning to fly.
It's really funny.
I laugh at that scene. And then there's a scene where Lady Hideko first rings the bell for Handmaiden. Yeah. And so he jumps up and hits her head right on the door, and she stumbles out.
Yeah.
Scenes like that are so stupid, but they're just funny for some reason.
Yeah. There's really great comedic moments when you find out the revelation of when Hideko goes to hang herself. And she's holding her up, and then you get that reveal of well, me and the Count were trying to trick you, and she lets her hang. She's like, what the fuck? And then gets back and catches her. Or the scene where
apologizing profusely.
Yeah, it's oh my God. It's funny. And then you get the part where all the rich men imagine themselves being spanked, and you're like, this is funny, but also really fucked up. Yeah. It's a funny movie. Which is really weird considering we've just spent all this time talking about how perverted and fucked up this movie is. There are legitimate moments of levity, actual levity in this, which is baffling. We haven't even there's so much we could talk about. We haven't talked about the score at all. The fact that
the same guy that scores all Park Chan-wook's movies. He's my favorite music composer for film. Yeah. He's I listen to his soundtracks when I'm doing other things. It's just incredible.
He's excellent. Yeah. I want to talk about, I had one question, and this was me, I was watching it, and it was the idea of, and this was not my idea, this is not given to me, but was the idea of did the uncle kill the aunt and then frame it as a hanging? And I always wondered about that. Because
I think she's pretty thoroughly out of her mind. Rightfully so. She's living under horrible conditions. I never Who like did you see watch a video about that?
Not really. No, I was just kind of like, it was one of those things of like I was talking about it and I was like, the idea was like thrown it out there. It's like, did he? And like kind of one of those ideas because there's a certain level of like, I understand we're in this patriarchal society and like the only way like any male figures get any repercussions in this movie is they die. Like because there are no repercussions because how are we going to punish them? They're the like overarching influence, and you have to imagine any of the male figures we see in this movie are like high-ranking people because at the end of the movie we see the uncle has the ability to send out men to be like, no two women can leave Kobe without me knowing, and you're like, holy shit. And the only way they can get actually like punishment is through like death itself. Like they have to be killed or that's it. The idea of like, because all we know about the aunt is that she was taken into the basement and then she died. And she killed herself. And I always wondered, like, did he kill her and then like frame it as
the octopus that killed her?
Yeah, like it's one of those things, and it's not really like it doesn't have any impact on the story. There's really not like it was just one of those things like of watching it, and I'm like, that's
it's
kind
an interesting layer that I had never considered, but I've always just assumed that it was because then it like mirrors Lady Hideko trying to hang herself too.
Yeah,
from
I figured, and it just kind of seemed like that. Do you guys have any other points you would talk about? Because we are like, this is about double the length of our last year one.
I just have one more point. Because it's just another big topic. What did you guys understand about? Because I've done the research for this, like apart from the movie. What did you guys understand about like what was going on in Korea at the time, like with Japanese occupation? Like, was that stuff made clear to you? Like, what was going on?
No, I don't know anything about the history.
Okay, so it's basically there's like this weird like westernization of Korea, and it's so first of all, there's cultural influences from Japan. Like Park Chan-wook is very critical of like Japanese occupation because speaking of patriarchy, there was like during this occupation, there's like hundreds of thousands of cases of sexual assault from Japanese soldiers onto like Korean women.
Really?
Yeah, during this time periods, like that all's got away with it, and so there's that element, like you said about Victorian era. Like there's obviously English influence coming over to South Korea as well, like with the way they dress and the way that the mansion looks. So there's just a lot of interesting like I can't think of like what the term is, like when I'm thinking of like Americanization, like where it's like American culture is creeping into other cultures through like force, but it's like there's more like a universal term for it that I can't think of at the moment, but it's like that.
Is his treatment because we see soldiers twice in the movie, and both the times we see them, one time they threaten children and the other one they're kind of like drunken fools a little bit.
Yeah.
They're excited to go home, but they're treated kind of like nuisances that ruin like this intimate moment. I wonder if that's like subtle criticisms about like a Japanese occupied Korea.
I think the whole fact that like Suki has to be called Tomoke or something.
Yeah.
Tomako. Just because that's her Japanese name. Like can only speak Japanese like when they're in the house and stuff like that. So there's definitely cultural dispersion or whatever there.
Like I don't know much about it, and that one's your research because I don't know much
there's just you can just like compare it to like modern day stuff like with like some people speaking English around the world because that's like because English is like the language you need to learn in order to like communicate with everyone from around the world and stuff, and like Americanization around the world. So it's very like similar to that, and just like imperialism in general.
Yeah.
So all that it's very understated, but I definitely took a lot of criticism towards that from Park Chan-wook.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Koreans losing their identity basically like through these like imperialistic stuff.
Mm-hmm. I would have to learn about it and then rewatch it and see that's one. That one I think is the benefit of 5 rewatches and an interest in history. Yeah. Mark, do you have any final points about the movie? Any observations? Anything you like, dislike?
I don't have any final observations. I think I've said my piece.
Yeah. I'm in
the same. The ending is fantastic. Like it really feels like they overcame a huge obstacle in it.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do movies like that where you feel like vindicated with like the characters.
Yeah. What's the ending? Can you talk about what happens to the count and the uncle, Matt?
So basically, I imagine people have probably seen like if they gotten this far, they probably have watched the movie. But basically, the count gets kidnapped by gets found out by the uncle, and then the uncle takes him into the basement where he's torturing him to find out where Lady Hideko and Suki are going, but obviously he doesn't know because they drugged him and got away. Yeah. And then he smokes the opium cigarettes. Yeah. Which is a great scene.
They're mercury.
The mercury cigarettes. And then they both die. And then like his last memories, which is a great scene where you get where you see his last thoughts. Yeah. Basically as he's breathing in, and they're all of Lady Hideko. Yeah. And and then Lady Hideko and Suki managed to escape to Hong Kong. I think they're going to go to.
I think Shanghai is where
Shanghai.
they go.
Yeah, that's right, Shanghai. And yeah, so happy ending.
Yeah, happy ending. And it's really one of those like great, like I like the idea that the final interaction between the count and the uncle is the uncle like, hey, what was Lady Hideko like during her like wedding night?
Scoundrel.
Yeah, complete like
and then the count stands up for her at the end.
Yep. It's like,
Yeah,
how
saying,
dare
like,
you?
Why would I tell you? Like, why would I disrespect her like that?
And it's one of those like, and all of a sudden the character of the count, like it's that like not necessarily like a tragic figure, but someone who like has a minor redemption, sort of. Yes, sort of, because he falls prey to the influences of this perversion, but then like redeems himself at the end and takes out like, is it like, I don't know, like it's a fascinating like, is the count like a redeemed character? Is like an entire like 30-minute other video we could talk about.
He's just like a product of his environment. Like he's someone who wants to get out of Korea because Korea is not a nice place to live in at the time.
Yeah,
for like people of lower class.
Yeah, I think, well, one observation I had was, and this definitely has to do with cultural and historical background that I don't have, but when he's getting his fingers chopped off, he's accepted it. The count, he's just like dragging a cigarette, as each finger gets pulled off. It's like, he's like, you know what? You caught me, It's like, you got me. I lost. Whatever,
I'm taking us back. I'm taking you out with me, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like, if it was like an American, be like, no, please don't do it. You know,
it'd be like dragged out, and the count would be just like this bad guy or whatever.
Yeah, and he'd give like a speech. He'll be like, I found you when you were, it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, all right, cool. He just kind of he's just like perversion until the end, and that's it.
Oh wait, I have one small observation before we
go for it.
I only noticed this on my 5th rewatch, and I laughed out loud when the count and Lady Hideko are drawing Suki. The picture that Lady Hideko draws is like terrible, and it's so funny. It's like borderline a stick figure, and like I have never noticed that until this rewatch, and I laughed. It was so funny. It's like Park Chan-wook just thought of that and just threw it in the script. I think that's and like the count's like a good drawer too, which is the funny part about it.
Yeah, well, because he's a forger.
Yeah. Well, so would you guys say that what's our review system now?
Is it worth our time?
Is it worth your time?
Is it worth your time?
Mark, is it worth your time?
I think so. Well, with like an asterisk that watch by yourself.
Yeah. Avoid watching it with family. Matt, is it worth everyone's time?
I would probably say so.
Probably just a tiny bit, 5 watches.
A tiny bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Just know that it's not the easiest movie to watch. It's long. It's about 2.5 hours, and it's very graphic. And it does not hold back, and you just kind of have to prepare for that.
Yeah,
but it's cinema.
It's cinema through and through.
Yeah,
I would say.
Mark, any final words? Any recommendations for the audience? Anything at the end? What do you want us to do?
When's the next Venza video coming out?
It's being worked on. It's actually being worked on.
Okay, George R. Martin.
Come on, George.
I gotta post to my blog.
What were we watching next? What did we decide on?
Tyler, I feel like Tyler. I don't know what we're watching next, but I feel like Tyler knows, and he's asking just for the sake of asking.
Oh, I guess we're gonna do taking your Pelham 1, 2, 3.
No, I know. I knew we were watching.
I knew it. I
was being a good co-host, and like, what do you think we're watching?
We're watching. It's got to be my recommendation, right?
It's one that you recommended, yeah.
What did I recommend? Oh,
or which one we agreed on?
Shut.
Yeah, Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then next week after that, it's High and Low, and then Rashomon.
Oh, I get 3 in a row?
Well, I mean, High and Low is, Eyes Wide Shut is kind of one I think we all agreed on. High and Low is your recommendation, and Rashomon, I think we were like, let's just try to analyze it. Let's just sit down and explore.
I suggested Rashomon because I know they'll never be able to understand it.
Yes, that's what we fun. You know what we should do? Like live on the podcast, you know what we should do? We should do a 2-movie episode because they're both short. Rashomon and Persona.
I said that last time we spoke. I said that last time.
Did you?
Yeah, Mark.
I'm taking all your ideas, Mark. Do you guys want to do that? Do you guys want to do Rashomon and Persona?
I think we'll go insane, but we can certainly try. I've been meaning to go through.
We'll get Franchise Mutiny on.
Yeah, I would. Oh, we should definitely do that.
Yeah. Welcome back, No Suffer.
Yeah,
you've been selected. Yeah.
Oh my god. All right.
We need a 4th film buff.
That's a couple weeks out, so he'll have time to prepare his his will and everything.
We're always trying to stay. We're always going to try to stay at least 3-4 movies ahead because that's for being professional.
And for those who've gotten this far, Eyes Wide Shut is on HBO Max. I think it's on HBO Max. I'm pretty sure it's on HBO Max.
It's on HBO
Yeah,
Max.
it is.
Yeah,
I saw it.
which means I'm going to watch it this week and just get it over with and try and go for it. All right, guys, this was fun. It's been a year, Matt. We're older. I have more books. I have not read more books though.
I had more books too, but I read them.
This is awesome. All right, guys. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
And what was the final thing I say? Oh, I got the final word.